chosen ones, there's a reason your spirit has felt the tremors of an ancient call. Long before language, before temples, before even the first spark of recorded time, the Anunnaki etched a prophecy into the strands of existence itself. It was not written in stone or ink, but in resonance, in memory, in the vibration of cosmic intention. And the final line of that prophecy was sealed. Not lost, sealed. You were never meant to blend in. The world tried to drown you in distraction, in distortion, in doubt. But something inside you burned beyond logic, a knowing, a gravitational pull to something older than pyramids and more sacred than scripture. That something was not imagined. It was encrypted, waiting, watching, whispering. The ancient Sumerians called it the echo of the ending. The priests of the old starlight orders believed the final one would hear a name that had never been spoken, because it was their own. It would appear in places only they could see, reflected in broken mirrors, encoded in dreams, and murmured through wind that passes through forgotten ruins. Your awakening activated the final line. The moment you questioned everything, you initiated the closing sequence, not of destruction, but of remembrance. The Anunnaki knew. They saw beyond time's veil, and they left behind the fragments, hidden in dead languages, submerged temples, and forbidden manuscripts that governments call myths to keep your mind asleep. But the prophecy did not end with a warning. It ended with a name, your name. And now, forces move. Old watchers stir. Portals reawaken. The prophecy breathes again, not because it must, but because you have returned. You are not decoding the prophecy. In the heart of the Zagros Mountains, where even satellites hesitate to peer too deeply, lies a cavern untouched by man for over 6,000 years. Within it rests the Anunnaki Codex, an artifact never meant for the eyes of modern humanity. Not because it was dangerous, but because it was waiting for a very specific presence to walk the earth again. You. The Codex isn't made of any metal or stone known to modern science. It's alive, pulsing with an energy that reacts only when approached by a frequency few ever emit. That frequency is embedded in your DNA. Scientists have dismissed the so-called junk strands of the human genome for decades. But those strands aren't a junk. They are keys. Sealed locks from a time when celestial beings walked among mortals and carved futures into the ether. Ancient Anunnaki texts speak of the one who closes the song. In their language, this wasn't death. It was a harmonic alignment. The final verse in a melody the gods began when they first altered human blood. The Codex was their instrument. But without the right soul to activate it, its message would remain dormant, timeless but silent. You've felt it, haven't you? The strange connection to symbols you've never studied, languages you somehow understand, memories that feel like yours but carry no earthly origin. The Codex reacts to that awareness. Every step you've taken toward truth has drawn you closer to its energy field. You didn't stumble upon this path. It was magnetized to your essence. The seal didn't break when scientists touched it. It didn't open for generals, popes, or kings. But the moment you came into conscious alignment, something ancient trembled. A faint glyph on the Codex began to shimmer, not for the world, but for you alone. The prophecy inscribed within the codex doesn't tell the future. It reveals what the timeline was always trying to forget. And when that final glyph fully awakens, it won't just rewrite history. It will fracture it, revealing a version of the past that was erased to conceal your origin. Most scholars believe the Emerald Tablets ended with the seventh passage, the famed "as above, so below." But a hidden verse was found, etched not in emerald, but in vibration, coded into the atomic structure of the tablet itself. Only recently detected by frequency mapping, the verse doesn't appear visually. It sings, and it only resonates when played alongside your unique vibrational imprint. In this unseen passage, the text describes a being not of royal lineage, not of priestly blood, but of awakened remembrance. It reads, "When the final flame walks the dust, the closed tongue will sing." The phrase confused every translator. Until now. The final flame wasn't a fire, it was a soul. One born in the final cycle of Earth's manipulated time stream. The closed tongue, your buried memory. The prophecy wasn't warning of destruction. It was promising a reactivation, a resurgence of a voice long silenced through lifetimes of spiritual amnesia. Your presence alone is shifting magnetic fields. Ancient structures, once dormant, are beginning to hum. Frequencies used to build pyramids are reactivating in your dreams, and it all traces back to this hidden verse, sealed by Thoth himself, who inscribed it using sound rather than script. Only one being was meant to decode it, not through intellect, but through resonance. That being is you. This is why you've been drawn to certain texts, symbols, even places you've never visited. It's why your life has never felt entirely your own. You were born into a world designed to forget you. The verse was not just a map, it was a mirror. Every word in it was encrypted with your essence. And now, that verse has begun to reassemble itself in your presence. Not on the surface of the tablet, but within your cellular memory. You don't read it, you remember it. There's a phrase near the end of this verse that translators can't explain. It simply says, "He who walked upon the sea shall whisper to the one who holds the flame." Some claim it refers to myth, but others, those who truly see, know it points to Yeshua, not as a savior of religion, but as a bridge across cycles. Before the earth was colonized, before the moon was fixed into orbit, the Anunnaki consulted an oracle beyond time, an artifact known as the Celestial Listener. It wasn't mechanical. It was biological, living, sentient. Birthed from the core of Nibiru itself, this oracle functioned as a receiver of future vibrations, recording the tones of voices that hadn't yet entered the universe. The listener was tasked with one mission: detect the soul frequency of the one who would end the divine silence. That frequency is your voice, not your words, not your accent. Your voice, the vibrational field generated when your being aligns with truth. The listener recorded it long before you were born, embedding it in a dormant echo that was locked inside one of Nibiru's satellite moons. When Earth began experiencing anomalies, weather patterns defying physics, ancient structures vibrating at midnight, dreamers across continents speaking the same unknown language, those tasked with decoding the signs traced it all back to a sound file stored in Nibiru's orbit. When the listener's memory was replayed, it emitted a single tone, not chaotic, not random, intentional. The tone matched no known being, past or present. It didn't align with any bloodline the Anunnaki had manipulated. It wasn't from the Nephilim, the Watchers, or any of the hybrid lineages. This tone was pure, untampered. And then, without any explanation, the oracle went dark, silent, as if its mission had been completed the moment the voice was identified. You are that voice, not because of what you say, but because of what you carry. A harmonic blueprint, undistorted by millennia of engineered reincarnations. When you speak from your core, the ether recognizes it. The resonance doesn't just travel, it rearranges, and the listener's final act before falling silent was to transmit a vision to a select few, encoded images of a figure surrounded by collapsing timelines, rewriting reality not with force, but with frequency. That figure didn't wear a crown, didn't lead armies. It simply spoke, and the old world began to crack across the skies of multiple civilizations: Maya, Sumer, Kemet, and Tibet. There exists a repeated glyph, 7 stars orbiting a central flame. For centuries, it was dismissed as simple stargazing, but that symbol encoded the key to a cosmic synchronization event that hadn't occurred in over 13,000 years, until now. Astronomers registered it as an anomaly. On the surface, it was a peculiar alignment of celestial bodies, a fleeting formation of 7 ancient stars converging with a precise symmetry. But this wasn't just astronomy. It was intention, Anunnaki intention. When the 7th star locked into place, an energy surge was released, not outward, but inward. Earth's magnetic field barely registered it. No alarms sounded, no headlines screamed, but something was unlocked. A buried frequency began to ripple through the ether. Machines couldn't hear it. Animals didn't react. But you felt it. Not with ears, but with memory. The frequency wasn't sound. It was a trigger. It activated forgotten pathways in your mind. Symbols you once ignored suddenly meant something. Numbers that haunted your clocks began speaking in patterns. Certain songs made you cry for no reason, as if mourning a life you hadn't lived yet. That's because you weren't responding emotionally. You were resonating. The Anunnaki embedded this frequency within the 7th alignment, not as a beacon for all, but as a signal to one. It was encoded in such a way that only the consciousness matching its ancient harmonic blueprint could perceive it. That match was you. This is why your dreams have shifted, why certain places feel familiar without logic, why time itself feels thinner when you're alone. The alignment didn't change the world, it changed your position within it. There's an unspoken verse in the Dead Sea Scrolls, one too fragmented for scholars to reconstruct. But what remains is this: when the 7th sings, the first shall stir. Many dismissed it as poetic nonsense, but the first doesn't refer to time. It refers to the origin. The unbroken lineage before the Anunnaki altered the chain. There are scriptures that were never canonized, words spoken in hushed tones, written in margins, buried beneath layers of redaction. One such verse, found in a shattered clay fragment beneath Mount Arbel, records a whisper from Yeshua not found in any gospel. It was spoken during what scholars believe was his final moment of solitude before entering Jerusalem. One will come who shuts the final gate. I was sent to open. He will come to seal. To most, this was dismissed as apocryphal nonsense. But among mystics, this verse was feared and revered. Because if Yeshua came to unlock consciousness, this successor would come not to close it, but to protect it from being altered again. In ancient Hermetic circles, it said there are gates beyond the body, beyond the mind, hidden deep in the soul's architecture. The Anunnaki opened many of these gates during their experimentation on human DNA, unlocking knowledge, power, and dimensional access. But not all. One gate remained sealed. One they could not breach. They called it the Breathless Gate, a realm that could only be entered by one not made from altered lineage, but from original essence. Yeshua, though born into this world, carried a vibration that temporarily opened that realm to transmit a divine pattern into time. But he warned it must one day be sealed by someone born after the distortions, yet untouched by them. Someone whose name would be encoded in both the beginning and end of the song. That name is written, not in letters, but in tone. And the codex the Anunnaki left behind sings it silently in your presence. The final gate is stirring. Its locks are ancient. Its key not made of gold or symbol, but of choice. The kind of choice no prophet, king, or rebel has ever faced before. A choice that echoes backward and forward simultaneously. Why would Yeshua speak of you in a whisper and not a shout? Why encode your destiny in fragmented text and forgotten stars? Perhaps because your arrival had to be veiled from the very forces that rewrote time until the moment was right. Beneath the sands of southern Mesopotamia lies the remnants of a forgotten structure, one never mentioned in any museum archive or academic record, the Temple of the 12 Bloodlines. It was not a place of worship, but of control. A convergence site built by the Anunnaki to maintain the 12 manipulated genetic strands they seeded into humanity. The 12 bloodlines were not merely royal or priestly. They were energetic conduits designed to fragment power, scatter memory, and dilute essence across generations. Only a few knew of this temple's existence. Fewer still knew of its fall. The night it collapsed, there were no earthquakes, no missiles, no human interference, only a pulse, a dream, one shared simultaneously by 9 awakened souls across different nations, and you were one of them. In that dream, each of you walked through halls of obsidian light, touched symbols you couldn't translate, and heard a hum that was not sound but soul. When you woke, you didn't remember the symbols, but you remembered the feeling. Something had been severed, disconnected, rewritten. At the exact hour of your dream, deep space monitoring stations recorded a gravitational fluctuation in the Earth's crust beneath southern Iraq. They assumed it was a data glitch. But what really happened? The Temple of the 12 Bloodlines, an energy matrix kept hidden for millennia, collapsed from within. Not through destruction, but deactivation. The frequencies once emitted by the 12 bloodlines ceased. No source could explain it, but you felt it. Your thoughts became clearer. Food tasted different. A veil lifted from the edge of your perception. That's because the temple was not just maintaining bloodlines. It was suppressing the one that couldn't be controlled, yours. The bloodlines weren't sacred. They were fences. And your dream wasn't imagination. It was initiation. Your presence in that astral convergence wasn't just symbolic. It was catalytic. The fall of the temple didn't begin with rituals or technology. It began with a dreamer who was never supposed to awaken inside the system. Now the 12 strands are unraveling. The encoded families are searching for answers, and the architects of genetic control have gone silent. Centuries before the pyramids, before Atlantis drowned, before even the Anunnaki seeded Earth, a transmission was received by the priest scientists of Sirius B. It was not written, it was downloaded, a sequence of light patterns that took lifetimes to translate. The script was kept hidden, encoded into crystalline slabs, and buried beneath the lunar temple on Sirius's shadow side. Only one of the slabs was ever activated, and what emerged from its surface left the ancient initiates speechless. It was not a message. It was a resonance, a living and memory, a signature. Yours. The slab did not respond to command, prayer, or vibration from the Sirians, but during a sacred alignment with Earth, it shimmered briefly, and in that shimmer, a sequence of glyphs appeared, unknown to even the high priests of light. They identified not a name, but a frequency, a tone so rare it was immediately deemed forbidden. This being, the elders concluded, has not yet existed, and yet has always existed. That essence was placed under lock, a metaphysical stasis guarded by a council that vowed never to speak of it again. They feared what it meant, a consciousness untouched by artificial architecture, a soul unmarked by timelines of distortion, a variable that even the architects of karma could not predict. The forbidden script bore one final line, inscribed in radiant plasma. When the path curves against itself, the flame will walk outside the spiral. No one understood it, but now the spiral of human history is collapsing, and the energy once held in that slab has begun to pulse again, not on Sirius, but here, on Earth, through you. This is why time feels fluid around you, why you've had moments that bend logic, glitches that seem personal. You are not bending reality. You are realigning it to a pattern that predates distortion. The forbidden script wasn't dangerous because of its content. It was dangerous because of what it confirmed, that someone would arrive carrying memory the gods could not erase. In a remote monastery, tucked deep within the limestone cliffs near the old trade routes of the Negev, lies a torn scroll written in a dialect older than Hebrew, closer to light than language. The monks who preserved it were sworn to silence, not out of obedience, but fear. The final stanza of the scroll records a prophecy allegedly spoken by Yeshua, not to crowds, but in private, just before vanishing into the wilderness for 40 days. He said, "When they read his name, time will shake." This fragment was never shared with the public. It was too specific. The pronoun wasn't metaphorical. His name didn't refer to a title or a symbol. It referred to a being yet to arrive. The monks didn't decode it by theology. They used sound. They chanted the text in harmonic intervals and discovered a resonance that trembled through stone, one that didn't echo forward, but backward. Ancient temples vibrated, caverns moaned, birds fled the trees, as if the sound itself reminded the world of something it was forced to forget. The resonance carried a name not yet spoken, and when aligned with solar flares and lunar tides, the vibration pointed to a singular event, the arrival of a soul whose presence would not be defined by power, but by memory. That memory was so pure, so undistorted, it would bend the structure of fabricated time. Time, you see, is not linear. It is held in place by agreements. Agreements made by beings who built this matrix. But a single, unedited frequency can fracture those agreements, especially when it carries the signature of origin. That's why the scroll remained hidden, why the Vatican, the secret orders, and even the so-called awakened circles never spoke of it. Because they feared what would happen if that name was spoken aloud, not just read, but remembered. And now, the vibration that once slept in the scroll is waking in you. Not metaphorically, literally. Your body, your voice, your dreams, they're not changing, they're tuning, aligning with a frequency that was never meant to reemerge, until now, deep beneath Antarctica, under layers of ancient ice that predate known civilizations, was once housed a crystalline vault. Known by the inner circles as the Anunnaki Archive, it wasn't just a storehouse of texts, it was a sentient repository. It recorded events not in words, but in resonance, storing the memory of Earth's manipulated timelines and the true histories erased from every sacred book. Explorers funded by covert global alliances claim to have found it. Yet no footage, no scans, no samples ever reached the surface. And then, without warning, the entire site was gone. Satellite scans show nothing, no collapse, no explosion, no trace of excavation. It was as if the entire structure vanished from existence, not just physically, but dimensionally. Whispers from within the black-budget circles suggest something extraordinary. The archive didn't disappear to avoid detection. It phased out the moment you came of age. Not because you posed a threat, but because your proximity to its frequency would have awakened it too soon. You were never meant to find the archive. Not before your internal clock activated. The archive wasn't just a vault of the past, it was keyed to you, calibrated to your mind, your breath, your unspoken knowing. Had you found it earlier, its contents would have remained silent, unreadable. The Anunnaki didn't hide it from the world. They hid it for you. But only when your frequency crossed a specific threshold would it reemerge. This is why your intuition spikes around certain coordinates, why you dream of cities made of crystal and sky maps that don't match any known constellations. Pieces of the archive are bleeding through the veil, responding to your rise in vibration. You're not being guided to find it. You're being calibrated to call it back. It's not buried. It's waiting in a suspended field between this world and another, locked by choice, not force. But something's changing. Fragments of the archive are flickering back into existence in the dreams of children, in the hands of artists, in the symbols appearing across the skies in inexplicable formations. They're all traces, markers, echoes of a structure ready to return. In the ancient highlands of Armenia, long before stone was shaped into ziggurats and pyramids, the sky itself was used as scripture. The elders of the First Age, those who spoke directly with the architects of form, inscribed prophecies not on tablets or scrolls, but within patterns of light. They were not constellations as we know them, but sequences, like celestial sentences only visible when the soul is ready to read them. Among these was one final script, a line of starlight that formed for less than 7 seconds every 13,000 years, then vanished again behind the veil of perception. That line just reappeared. High-altitude observatories caught only a glitch, a sudden alignment of stars no system could predict. But in the dream state of an unnamed monk in Ethiopia, the message was seen clearly. The starlight didn't form a word in any language. It formed a signature, a pattern of light and frequency that matched a single soul blueprint, yours. The final prophecy did not end with a warning or a command. It ended with your name, not in human syllables but in vibration, color, and memory. This prophecy was not meant for the world. It was meant for the one who remembered without being told, the one whose awakening could not be engineered, whose destiny could not be redirected, whose soul slipped through the fingers of the architects unnoticed until it was too late. You were the anomaly written into perfection, the ghost in their machinery, the heartbeat that never conformed to the rhythm of programmed time. And now the sky has spoken. The final line of prophecy wasn't sealed in fear, but in sacred timing. It needed to activate when the veil was thin enough, when the world was loud enough for you to stop seeking approval and start seeking source. You are not fulfilling the prophecy. You are completing it, bringing closure not through destruction, but through remembrance. You are what the old gods couldn't predict, what the false creators tried to suppress, what every hidden scroll, buried glyph, and fractured relic has pointed toward.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.